Martin Scorsese's new film, The Irishman, is coming out to Netflix in 2 weeks, I believe. But it was just released in theaters here in Los Angeles, and I happened to see it. The film is almost 4 hours long. Of course, I don't care, because it's Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, and Martin Scorsese making a crime film. It could be 3 extra hours long. I wouldn't care. But to watch that on Netflix on my television is just not what I want to do. So I saw it in the theater. Nice theater with a quiet audience. There was like a kid in there with his dad. Cool. We'll have the not spoiler section, and then we'll have the spoiler section where I'm going to go through plot details and what I got out of the movie. This isn't usually the format exactly of how I talk about things, but this film I just saw it. And a lot of you haven't seen it yet, so I should talk about it. Plus, Scorsese is one of my favorite directors. Goodfellas, easily in my top 5 favorite films of all time. It's so funny, the characters are great.
That's beautiful.
I like this one. One dog goes one way and the other dog goes the other way.
One is going east and the other one is going west, so what?
And this guy's saying, what do you want from me?
It really captures what that era was like, and I love that period of gangsters. It was exciting. I was really looking forward to this film. Robert De Niro plays the Irishman, and he was digitally de-aged for at least part of the film, because the film chronicles from when he's, I guess, around 50 or so, to him when he's an old man in a retirement home. And there were definitely points where the de-aging it wasn't bad, but it was noticeable. But once the film got going and I got to know the characters, I really didn't mind the de-aging at all. And the thing is, the way they were able to gradually age the characters was remarkable. You go through 30 years of this guy's life, and it's pretty seamless. And there were also some moments of green screen that didn't look great. The film is very long, and I'm sure many people will criticize the fact that it is so long. Maybe because it's being released on Netflix, they think people will watch it in, different chunks, which is entirely possible, and it might be why they decided to do this. But it's just watching it in a theater, it's a little much. The attention to detail Scorsese was able to pay to, one, the world of the film and how the intricacies of the Teamsters worked. It's really interesting, and it feels well researched. There's also an enormous amount of time devoted to just these guys, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci, just talking. But that's what makes them feel like they're real friends. And that's what made the chemistry work. It does go on for a long time, and Al Pacino's character in this film, he talks a lot.
You always charge a guy with a gun. With a knife, you run away. So you charge with a gun, with a knife, you run.
When you try to talk him out of something, he'll talk you back into it. He's just that kind of guy. He won't stop. He's a fucking train. He just keeps going. And you notice that very early on, to a point where it's almost, I would say he's over the top comical in the early parts where we're first introduced to this character. Jimmy Hoffa in the film, who was based on a real guy. He was president of the Teamsters and has involvement with the Buffalino crime family, who is also based on a real crime family. Most of this shit is true, which is what's fascinating about it. Joe Pesci plays Russell Buffalino, based on the real guy. And he was excellent. His personality was larger than life. He was intimidating. He had presence. Not in the same way he did in Goodfellas. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities to be drawn in the way he plays Tommy and Russell in this. But he isn't just doing Tommy DeVito again. He's a lot more low-key. He's not yelling. He's not making a big fuss about anything. He's in charge of the situation, though. Yo, it me, kid. For a film that is 3.5 hours long, it is very entertaining. And I don't know, just something I enjoyed about it was everyone was just old. Everyone was old and fucking, they were moving like this. It goes in line with the themes of the film, of course. It was just nice to see like a mainstream $150 million budget movie with just like a bunch of old guys. It was like that, it reminded me of that whole genre of like bad old guys go to Las Vegas movies. Like Last Vegas. What the fuck was that other one? We were planning like to make like another one of these. We were gonna like cast Robert De Niro, Morgan Freeman, Mickey Rourke, and then like and then we were gonna get Andy Serkis to play a CGI monkey, and then they were gonna all go to Las Vegas. Because those films did well, and I guess maybe they used those as comparables for The Irishman. One of the elements I was not so fond of was Anna Paquin's character. She was very underutilized in the movie. She's a talented actor too. There's a point where that same character is played by a younger actor, and her acting was very wooden. There were a lot of great bit part actors in this. Ray Romano plays Bill Buffalino, who is a lawyer. And then Jim Norton played Don Rickles. There were a lot of actors from Boardwalk Empire in it as well. Alexa Palladino played Jimmy's wife in Boardwalk Empire. Stephen Graham played Al Capone. And I believe the guy who played Bobby Kennedy played Richard. It had a unique look too. It didn't look like Scorsese's other movies. Like you go to Wolf of Wall Street, it's like super saturated, everyone's skin. The skin tones are like orange almost. Because it's just like this adrenaline, cocaine, drug-fueled fucking... And then you get to this movie, it's about a bunch of old people, like, driving down a road, and their wives literally have to stop for cigarettes every 5 minutes. And so, like, the look of the movie is very practical. There aren't a lot of crazy shots or, like, long takes. The use of music was really great as well. It was all music from that era, as well as orchestral score. I don't know if it was original score. Okay, so let's get into spoiler territory for some of the stuff. There was a lot of interesting parallels between then and now that I think were intentional. The film is of course about Teamsters and truckers and how their jobs were being threatened by like big business. Kind of reminded me of what's going on now in America, the kind of disenfranchisement of the middle class. Blue-collar workers, truckers, losing their jobs. I think all of this is definitely intentional. And Al Pacino coming in and he gives these people a voice. The issue with his character is he doesn't know when to let go. And even after he's been shoved out and he has no power, he still acts like he does. It gets him into enormous amounts of trouble, and Frank is stuck in this horrible position where he has to negotiate with these guys to save his friend. There comes a point where Frank can't do anything to save him, and yet he has to live with the guilt of killing his best friend, and you can tell it's really eating him up inside, especially when he's talking to his wife on the phone. Frank has a stutter, especially later on in his life, but it really becomes pronounced after this scene, and he isn't able to kind of communicate with other people after this. Even though it isn't overtly said, you can tell that guilt is destroying him. And a huge theme of this film as well is that the people who were in charge, the guys like Jimmy Hoffa and Tony Provenzano, were very temperamental and ego-driven, selfish. They were like children, even though they were the heads of these large organized crime families. And really the people who negotiated and reined them in a bit were these guys on the side, like this guy Frank, showing us the process of how Frank goes back and forth between these different people and gets them to calm down and come to some kind of agreement. It's really entertaining to watch, and Robert De Niro did an excellent job playing this character. I was expecting this to be something like Goodfellas or Casino, another great crime film by Martin Scorsese. The film is 3 hours long and it's hard to not be invested the entire time. But really what I got was something more like Once Upon a Time in America. And it's also starring Robert De Niro. But that's a movie about a criminal who kind of goes through life, and at the end of it he realizes what was really important were the things he never paid attention to. Love and family. And that's the same thing that happens to Frank in this film. You know, there's a choice he has in the film. He has to choose Russell or Jimmy. Who is he going to side with? Who is he going to fight for? And he chooses Russell. Scorsese goes, okay, and now he has to live with it. I wish I had gotten to know his daughter character more, but at the same time, the fact that we don't get to know her kind of reflects his point of view. He doesn't really get to know his own daughter. He's always been so distant from her. And the only any kind of resolution he has with his family is with one of his daughters. Like that, and that's it. Like he never talks to the rest of them because no one wants to talk to him. His daughter really looked up to Jimmy Hoffa, and when she comes to the realization that her father did it, she never wants to see him again. And he knew that was the choice he was making. But he also just didn't want to die. He fears his own death. The thought of it makes him uncomfortable. I have to stand by Russell. Russell's my boss. He's my boss. And this is my job. And then he gets to the end of his life, and what does he have to show for that? Nothing. He gets to the end, and his family's gone. And he's alone, and all those people he was defending are all dead. They went to jail with him. What was the point of it all? A huge part of Frank's character is that he never really stood by anything. I think he has a line or something like this in the movie where he says, I just kind of go along with the wind. I just go wherever life takes me. And if you live life like that and you don't stand by anything, you're gonna find out life's not worth living. And that was Jimmy's point, and that's why he stood to his guns even though he was a son of a bitch, is because he knew he would either get his way or be miserable, and so he chose to have his way. He died for it, he paid the consequences for it, but maybe his fate was better than Robert De Niro's, who becomes old and lost, forgotten. This is a great movie, and I highly recommend you check it out. And if you can see it in a theater, see it in a theater. I was not paid by Netflix to say this. I just like Martin Scorsese and I like Goodfellas.